Hi, this is Gareth from Heartfelt Horsemanship. Jamie and Monkey are going to go through the basics of steady pressure. Steady pressure is the second type of pressure we use when teaching horses the basics of natural horsemanship. Steady pressure is what we use when we ride, and it's not necessarily how horses move each other. They normally move each other with rhythmic pressure, which is why we teach rhythmic pressure first. Jamie put steady pressure on Monkey's nose to move him back. We still apply the phases. We start with as gentle as possible, moving up to as firm as necessary. We'll start just with the air, then onto the hair, then the skin, then the muscle as firm as necessary. Move them backwards on the chest, air, hair, skin, muscle. If the horse didn't move off the steady pressure for the muscle, we don't go harder. We never use more than 4 ounces of pressure. If we get to 4 ounces and they don't move off, we don't release on the brace, but we'll bring in the rhythmic pressure which we have already taught them. Air, hair, skin, muscle. If it doesn't move, there's the rhythmic pressure. Air, hair, skin, muscle. If it doesn't move, rhythmic pressure. And we give them dwell time. Give them some time to think about it. Give him a rub, let him feel good about us rather than just bullying him for the entire time we're working with him. The goal is for him to move off at earlier pressure on every session. So that last time Jamie got to skin without having to go to muscle and he moved back and we give a release. Eventually we will just have to get to air. Air, hair, skin, and again he's starting to roll back on that. Remember to release on the slightest try. If we keep going through the process even when the horse is attempting to do the right thing, we're never going to teach them to be lighter. Air, hair, skin, muscle. There's a bit of chaos behind us with some new horses. Air, hair, skin, muscle. You'll notice that the steady pressure is what we use when we ride. That's the only reason we'd introduce a form of pressure that isn't natural to a horse, because when we're on them we don't use rhythmic pressure to ride. So we have to introduce this, and we've got the rhythmic pressure to back it up. So using the halter is just another version of what Jamie was doing on his nose with her fingers. Air, hair, skin, muscle, and release when he drops off. Initially with that response to the halter we're looking for just a backup. Eventually we'll want them to drop their head and round their back when they back up, but for now we're just going to accept the backwards. That's it. We want that as light as possible because that's going to be our backup when we're riding. When it gets to our quarters, we're going to be putting pressure where our legs would be when we ride. Okay, so for 4/4, to move the horse's 4/4 or to direct your horse with your legs, it's going to be forward of the girth. Again, air, hair, skin, muscle. As soon as they move over, we release. If they were to sit on you, you can use your rhythmic pressure to move the forequarters across so they understand. There we go, Jamie's adding the rhythmic pressure there. The choice of the position here is directly related to physics. We want the forequarters to turn, we're going to put pressure in front of the drive line that'll drive the horse's forequarters around. Okay, hindquarters would be behind the girth. Kind of exaggerated position to make things as clear as possible for the horse. Air, hair, skin, muscle. And if we needed to, we can drive the hindquarters using rhythmic pressure. Seems like you're having a lick and chew. Even though he's done this 1,000 times, he's kind of figuring out that we're being very specific with him right now. Jamie just mentioned there that it never hurts to redo this. If ever you're finding trouble with your horse, going back to these basics, you might find something that's gone a little bit off. They've got a little bit of confusion. You might need to go back and redo these basics. As we get more advanced, we'll ask for a little more. Maybe have it do a full 360 on the hind end using the forequarters, turning the forequarters around. For now, we just ask for a single step. But if we're always getting more advanced, we're making sure those basics are in place and we're progressing our horses. If we stick on this stuff for the next year, you find your horses get dull and kind of resentful of doing the same thing over and over. Everything we do with the horse, we do on both sides of the horse. Unless you carry a sword, then you can only mount from the right hand side of your horse. Otherwise, you should be mounting, dismounting, leading. Every aspect of horsemanship needs to be done from both sides of the horse. We ride both sides of the horse, therefore we need to have them used to us on both sides. So to introduce the steady pressure, Jamie uses her fingers. It's just the fingertips, so we can be as light as possible. Once a horse has an understanding on it, we're going to try and mimic what happens when we ride, and that is we use our stirrup to do it. We don't start with a stirrup because there's a possibility we can be a little too hard with that. So the feel of your fingertips gives you the feel of lightness, and then once we get to the stage where we're introducing the stirrups, the horse already knows what we're looking for. There we go. You hear us say it 1,000 times. Never miss an opportunity to just be with your horse in between, waiting for that dwell time. Jamie's using steady pressure on the pole and then giving him a rub once he moves away from the pressure. Reinforced with the halter. So just like with the rhythmic pressure, we have 6 directions we can move any part of our horse. Left, right, up, down, forwards and backwards. It gives us very accurate communication with the horse. We can move the head up, down, left, right, forwards and backwards. We can move the forequarters up, down, left, right, backwards and forwards. So even a horse as advanced as Monkey, they need a little bit of reminder of going to the rhythmic rather than just the steady pressure. He's had about a week off, so he might be a bit reluctant, so he's actually a good candidate to show you. If you want to see us introducing these things to less advanced horses, we do have them up on the YouTube channel, training horses that we have through possibly not as easy as our more advanced horses. So if you're running into trouble with your horse and you're feeling a bit disillusioned that it doesn't look as good as it does with Monkey or Dreamy or Bella, you can watch some of the others and see how we deal with the challenges that arise. So you can have a foot go up, down, left, right. So what Jamie does here, she lets the horse know that she's going for the foot. Then she clicks with rhythm 4 times. If he doesn't lift up, she just pinches at that chestnut and he lifts. The goal here is that within a couple sessions, you slide your hand down and you click and your horse lifts its feet. Makes life much easier for your farrier, but also has your horse surrender its feet to you. And when we're riding our horses, we need them to surrender their feet. Okay, when Monkey's relaxed, when he's given his foot freely and not fighting, Jamie will give him his foot back in a polite manner. We don't just drop the foot down to the ground and make them stub their toes. You'll often hear people say, well, it's just a horse, you can do whatever. Just remember that it's a living creature and they do have opinions about how they're handled. And if you're going to handle them rudely, they're not going to be as willing to participate in everything we're doing with them. They might go along to get along, but they're not going to be as committed to the partnership. Okay. So with the hind foot, we don't grab for the chestnut because it's in an awkward position. We grab at the knee and then we take the feet out behind them. You don't want to come out to the side where you're going to trip the horse up. As Jamie says, it can put a lot of strain on the pelvis and be painful for a horse if you come out to the side. Jamie's stretching his hamstrings. If you watch how Monkey is standing while Jamie is going through all of this, that's a crucial part of horsemanship. If your horse doesn't stand until you ask it to do otherwise, it's not going to be a cooperative partner in the saddle. Runaway in the making. So all that work we put into building the driving, the forequarters, the hindquarters, the backwards, forwards, we can use that to control the horse. If it starts walking off without asking, we can back them up and they can stand there. As soon as they try and walk off, you back them up. It's very important that we get them to stand in one place until we ask them otherwise. Okay, Jamie's going to start introducing the stirrup to ask for the hindquarter disengagement. Same position. Hopefully we can be lighter because we've introduced the fingers first. still go through the same phases of hair, skin, muscle, bone, and if he sits on it, you bring on your rhythmic pressure. There we go. Now, where he sat on Jamie there and she dropped the stirrup, she didn't drop the pressure because she kept going with the rhythmic pressure there. So she didn't release on a brace, she brought in another form of pressure to support what she was initially asking for. And now he gets it. So I'm preparing him to be light off the leg. We need to have those phases working. So Monkey kind of pushed his boundaries there and he sat on the stirrup, followed through, but the next time he got it right. Here we go. So Jamie wasn't bashing the stirrup onto him, she was just using rhythmic pressure. She first went through the phases of the air, hair, skin, muscle, and then brought in rhythmic pressure when he didn't move off. Watch how light he's being now. So we're not talking about a ton of, when we're sitting in the saddle, we're not talking about a ton of pressure from that leg. We just touch the stirrup to the horse and that should move off our leg. If you start with just going in hard and that's the only way you can get your horse to move, they'll get progressively heavier and you'll have to get progressively bigger spurs and harder whip, and eventually there'll be nothing else you can get to. Air, hair, skin, muscle. So he moved off just before we would get to rhythmic. And when you're learning, give your horse plenty of time, for both you and your horse. Really slow down the process. Maybe count to 4 on each phase in your head would be a good starting point. Remember that everything's based on rhythm for a horse, so even when you're using steady pressure, count to 4 rhythmically, move up a phase. Count to 4 rhythmically, move up to the next phase. And as soon as they answer, we give a release. Air, hair, skin, muscle, rhythmic. I'm guessing what Jamie's doing there is when Monkey's getting a bit half asleep, she wakes him up with a disengagement. With Monkey's personality type, which is quite a low impulsion horse, when you're working on the slow stuff, your horse might kind of fall asleep on you. Every now and again do something else to wake them up and keep them engaged and go back to it. So what Jamie's doing is, when you do that disengagement, you build a mental connection to your horse. So if she feels that at any point he's not really with her, he'll go back to that hindquarter disengagement in the driving game. Also remember that horses can only work for about 15 minutes, but they can play all day. So try and keep it like a game. It's got a lot to do with our attitude. If we just going in there and getting it done and treating the horse like a motorbike or some form of machinery, they very quickly feel like it's work. If they're engaged and they're getting cuddles in between and strokes and feel like they're part of the process, then it feels like play, and then you can go for all day. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of steady pressure on the feet. Air, hair, skin, muscle. Jamie rewarded on the slightest try there because he was kind of sitting on her. And she could have gone heavier and tried to get his foot up. The ideal is to release as soon as the horse gives some form of attempt. As they get more advanced, we can ask for a little more. But with this exercise in particular, where we don't have a rhythmic pressure to go to, we just have to release on the slightest try. There we go, and he's getting progressively better. So Jamie's giving a really long release here because Monkey got confused with that one. Now that last attempt, he seemed to understand what Jamie was asking. So she's going to give a long release for that. So for a horse with low impulsion, that dwell time is the biggest reward you can give. There's no treat in the world that means more to them than give them the chance to be left alone and hang out. And there's the lick and chew. So if Jamie hadn't waited for that long dwell time, we might have missed a lick and chew. And if you're ever unsure of how long to wait, get to how long you think is the right amount of time and then wait a little more. There we go. We aim for a 1% improvement in every session. So we're not expecting your horses to suddenly do everything fantastically within 1 hour. Aim for 1% improvement. If you get more than 1%, that's great. That's a nice surprise. Don't ask too much of your horse though. If you think about a child starting school on the first day of school, we don't sit down and ask them to write their names. We sit down and we start teaching them to write the letters. And even before they write the letters, they need to be able to draw straight lines and circles to make up the letters. Understand that horses don't know intrinsically what we're asking them, especially when we get to the steady pressure. We need to be understanding and forgiving. Watch how Jamie closed her fingers around the rope there. It's very much how you would close your fingers around a rein when you're riding. In all these groundwork exercises, if we can find ways to build our lightness at the same time of building your horse's lightness, that muscle memory starts to impact how we ride. See, Jamie will slide her hand down, close one finger at a time. There we go. See how when Monkey fought there, she went back to the last pressure that she left off at. That's a principle that applies to when you're working with rhythmic pressure, steady pressure. If a horse decides to kind of challenge the lesson you've just learned, you've got to go back to the highest phase you left off at. Don't start it gentle as possible. You've got to go back to where you left off. So if you got to phase 3, the horse gave a try and then went back to pulling, you have to go back to phase 3. Okay, counting a phase 1, 2, 3, 4. And as firm as necessary. There we go. And re-engage your horse mentally. So how steady pressure relates to when we ride, one rein stop, a hindquarter disengagement with our reins, a backup, our direction, all relates to steady pressure, or at least the start of our phases. We might bring in rhythmic pressure if the horse braces. Okay, Jamie slides her hand down, one finger at a time, and brings the rein up to her thigh, stabs it to the thigh, keeps it in one position until the horse stands still, and puts slack on the rope. Now, anyone that knows Monkey when he's on form will know that he is kind of hamming it up for us at the moment. He doesn't normally run around in circles, but he has had a week off. One finger at a time. It's very important to get the point that you focus your rein at from the time you start picking up. It's a very fine line between where we ask for the one rein stop and for the hindquarter disengagement. And if we start going to the same position as we would for the one rein stop, and we're actually asking for the hindquarters, we often lock our horses up and force them into a brace. Okay, there's the hindquarter disengagement. Watch where Jamie's pointing the rein. It's going where her belly button would be, but it's pointing at the opposite hip. See that rein pointing to the opposite hip? And then she's got the steady pressure behind the girth. As soon as the horse steps across there, that's when we release. Whereas with the one rein stop, we release when the horse is standing still and has put slack in the rein. One rein stop on this side. Point the rein where your thigh is going to be when you're riding. He stops and gives slack, you release immediately. Slide your hand down. So Jamie released as soon as Monkey was starting to bend laterally there. When we do our anti-fly checks when we're sitting on the horse, we go all the way through. When we're riding generally, we're going to release as soon as the horse gives a try. We don't always bend our horse around when we're riding. Every time we want to stop, we don't bend them around. We release as soon as they stop. Jamie, do you think you can show us how to get them moving off the stirrups from the ground for the backup?
For the backup?
Yeah. So for the backup, that rhythmic pressure needs to come in front of the drive line. So we can get both stirrups up in front of the drive line and use rhythmic flapping. We're not kicking the horse. We're just doing a butterfly flap there until they move backwards. Teaching this on the ground before we even get on the horse to try and teach it makes your life much easier. So with this, Jamie's doing the rhythmic pressure. If the horse sits on the rhythmic pressure, we've taught them to move off the steady pressure at the chest, so we can just lean on them lightly and then move them back. Or if you need to release the stirrups, then you can pick up your halter and have them move back so they understand. So he knows what's coming, so he's just moving off. And that's really what we want. We want to use the anticipation to our advantage to get them lighter. We never want them filling in the gaps, but that's why we give dwell time. So the dwell time also teaches them to wait for us to give a command. Jamie's having him bring his head down, closes one finger at a time on the halter, and if he sits and pulls back, then it's side to side with rhythm. There we go. And you see him getting progressively lighter. Okay guys, that's about all for steady pressure. The next section will be the anti-flight checks under saddle. We'll talk a little bit more about steady pressure there, but how this relates to the riding aspect. Thank you.